Hello everybody. In this video I'd like to talk about the Amiga and the 30th anniversary of the launch of the Amiga, which took place in 1985 at the Lincoln Center, which is New York, I think. Since then the Amiga has been a massive influence really in the world of computing, at least in my opinion. It started off with the Amiga 1000, which was equally expensive as a home machine and a games machine, or not expensive enough as a business machine. It kind of confused people really what it was in 1985, as it was a very powerful home machine, a very powerful business machine, but business didn't buy it because there was no software for it initially. Games appeared very quickly, rather early on, with people like EA, Cinemaware and various other people writing games quite quickly for it, as it was miles in front of everybody else's machines. Multitasking, high colour, fantastic sound, disk drive. It was a great machine, plugged into your TV as well as a monitor. But the Amiga 1000 never sold as well as perhaps Commodore thought it would. They, at the time, Commodore were having financial trouble, and they overpaid, some would say, for the Amiga. Bought the corporation outright, all the staff, everything, from under the nose of Atari, which went on to release the ST. Curiously enough, they made the ST before the Amiga was ready. But anyway, so Commodore bought the Amiga, and it became obvious pretty quickly that they weren't really sure what to do with it. I think they thought it would sell in bucket loads without doing any advertising, without spending any money on it, and it would sell pretty much as the C64 did. It didn't, as it turned out. It was a very capable machine, a very powerful machine, but it was just too expensive really. 1987 they released the Amiga 500, which had a built-in kickstart, which means you could turn it on. Didn't really do anything when you turned it on, but you could turn it on, put a workbench disk in, boot into the operating system within 20-30 seconds, and you could do things. Now the Amiga 500 was quite important for Commodore, because it meant that the Amiga did now sell in bucket loads. Especially in Europe, it was a massive seller. It was in the magazines. I don't remember it being on TV, although I know that it was. It wasn't until years later that I saw the Commodore adverts for the Amiga, but that would have been probably 1993. Anyway, go back to 87. Commodore Amiga 1.2 A500 with 512K was launched. Now Commodore UK very cleverly early on introduced games packs with the Amiga. So when you bought the machine, it already came with games. So you could unbox it, plug it in your TV, and you could use it straight away. Unlike most other computers at the time, usually you bought them and they came with nothing. But Commodore realised if you sold a kit, it would be much better, and it was. It sold by the bucket load. Now in 1988, early 1988, I managed to convince my mum to buy an Amiga 500, and I got an Amiga 500 1.2 512 A500, and it was, for the time, fantastic. It was streets ahead of everything else, including this machine, which up until the year before was what I was using, which is the C64. Now the difference between the 64 and the Amiga, apart from the hardware, was very dramatically the software. The C64 had thousands of titles, the Amiga had none. Even in 1987 and 1988, software started to appear and you could buy it at your local computer shop. But the quality varied from pretty good to absolutely dire. In fact, a lot of the software titles for the Amiga were awful. They were very, very poor. of a similar standard to the games I make, pretty much. They were dreadful. But the Amiga did have some standout titles. Defender of the Crown was one of them, which made me, or made me ask Mum to buy the Amiga in the first place. Defender of the Crown was featured in probably Amiga format, or Commodore user it might have been, because I was a 64 user at the time. It was Christmas time when we were all together, and I opened the magazine, and there before me was Defender of the Crown. Now, at the time it appeared to be full colour, photorealistic, the most wonderful graphical images you have ever seen. And this was on a home computer for £399. So I had to have one. So the Amiga 500 was a massive success in the UK, Germany, and all Europe really. It went as far as Australia, New Zealand, all around the world. The only place it didn't sell was the USA. And this was simply because Commodore did not advertise, nor did they sell a great deal of machines in America, because they realised they would have to have a massive advertising campaign to conquer America, and they couldn't afford it. Commodore rolled on from disaster to disaster to bankruptcy all through their history. They went from famine to feast every 2 or 3 years. The Commodore 64 sold well, provided them with lots and lots of money. When the sales dropped off of the 64, they had the Amiga. The Amiga didn't sell well initially, so the money didn't come in. The A500 was almost a make or break machine, and it did make Commodore. It made them millions. So they followed that up with the A2000, then the A3000, all variations of an A500, or the A1000 in truth. The new machines were the A4000 and the 1200, which came quite a lot later. Unfortunately, by this time Commodore were quite a long way behind the competition. The PC had moved on from 4 colours to 256 colour VGA, comparable to the Amiga AGA chipset. The AGA chipset was released in early 90s, which would be 93 I think it was. So it was no longer far ahead, or further ahead than the competition, so that was an issue. Commodore had been working on a faster chipset which would rival the PlayStation, but this was cancelled, delayed, and eventually never released, which is very sad. Commodore had some amazing engineers, Dave Haney, Bill Hurd, among many others, and they squandered their lead really. They were a company that could have done so much that did so very little, which is a shame. Anyway, by 1994 Commodore were in a whole heap of trouble. They were losing money hand over fist, but the management managed to give themselves enormous pay rises, which is nice, when they were laying staff off, cancelling projects, shutting down R&D, but giving themselves pay rises. Well done. By 1994 Commodore had released the A1200, the Amiga 4000 and the CD32 games console, but the CD32 would be their last venture forever really, as the company collapsed and filed for bankruptcy in April 1994. Now the CD32 was being made in quite large numbers in the Philippines, and they ended up being locked away in warehouses under armed guard and then being sold on the black market by the Taiwanese government, whoever it was at that time. So the stock disappeared. Commodore ended up being sold to Escom, a German PC supplier, who themselves had a massive expansion in 93-94. By 95 they'd expanded too far, the PC market had collapsed and they were bankrupt, so the Commodore Amiga was homeless again. It ended up being sold from one company to another, but it never became anything after the collapse of Commodore, which is a shame. But as the years have rolled by, many things have come to light about Commodore. They had big problems at the MOS Technologies with the Environment Agency. They were going to be fined massive amounts of money for cleaning up spillages and leakages from the the MOS fabrication site. They were also paying massive wages to higher management who were coming and going on a regular basis. They were losing the technology battle with IBM, with the PC. Not IBM, but all the other clone makers. In fact, they were just hanging on by the skin of their teeth, really. And it's a shame. But, having said that, this year is the 30th anniversary of the release of the Amiga, and it is quite an event. I've already attended the Amsterdam Do in June the 27th, 2015. Poster up there that you probably can't see, with RJ Michael, Dave Haney, Carl, Jens was there, Petro, Dave, I've already said Dave, Trevor Dickinson, lots of guys, and it was a great event. It was a true honour meeting RJ Michael. He was a really nice guy. I will be attending the Peterborough event next month in the UK, which will see most of the guys there again, or some of them. Dave Haney won't be there, I think. Bill Hurd I've been in touch with, but he's not coming. He's going to an event in the US. So if you can make it to the Peterborough event, that would be great. There will be talks there. Tickets are still on sale. If you do a search, you'll find it. But this year is the 30th anniversary, and it should be celebrated. The Commodore Amiga was a truly wonderful machine, which should have done much better than it did. But there you go. That's life, isn't it? So there we go. As you can see, the 64 is doing its own little tribute. Thank you very much.